Welcome to The Debate. Have you ever wondered if our relentless drive to figure out the universe, our desperate need to understand exactly why we're here and how everything works, is actually the exact thing keeping us miserable?
It really is the ultimate tension of human existence, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
I mean, we are caught between the intellect, which constantly demands to know, and the soul, which, well, it simply wants to be.
Right, exactly. And today we are dissecting Harold Stevens' exploration of the mechanisms of life. He synthesizes cellular biology, quantum physics, and ancient mystical traditions to answer a central question.
The big question, really, what is the true purpose of human life, and how do we attain it?
Yeah. Does our purpose lie in the rigorous intellectual pursuit of knowing and measuring the universe? Or is it found through a complete cessation of the intellect, like a profound surrender to our spiritual origin?
It's the classic divide between knowing and belief.
Exactly. I'll be representing the perspective of the skeptical scientist today. I argue that human purpose is achieved precisely through, well, knowing.
Okay.
Our highest calling is to consciously observe and align with the biological and quantum feedback loops that shape our reality. To me, the pursuit of knowledge isn't some tragic flaw. It is our fundamental cosmic function.
And I will be representing the perspective of ancient wisdom traditions. I argue that the intellectual hunger to know is actually the very root of human suffering.
The root of it?
Yes. True purpose isn't found in dissecting reality or, trying to optimize our circumstances. It's found in belief, which I define as a profound surrender, a cessation of the ego's obsessive need for proof, and a return to our original unmanifested unity.
Well, let's ground this in the physical architecture of life first. Because when you look at the fundamental building block of life, the biological cell, you are looking at an absolute masterclass in knowing.
A masterclass in knowing?
Yeah. But Harold Stevens points to the human cell, leaning heavily on Bruce Lipton's work in cellular biology, to show that a cell operates entirely on a system of environmental awareness.
Right, the receptor proteins.
Exactly. A cell membrane is packed with receptor proteins. It is constantly taking in chemical signals, measuring the environment, processing that data, and outputting a highly specific response to maintain homeostasis. It knows what is happening outside, and it adjusts its internal machinery to serve the greater organ. I argue that humans operate the exact same way on a macro scale.
So you're saying our purpose is basically to be giant cells?
Well, in a way, yes. We find our purpose by actively participating in the greater organism of the universe. We're required to take in data, measure it truthfully, and respond. That is what conscious co-creation is.
I understand the elegance of the cellular model, I really do. But let's look at the psychological cost of that constant measurement.
The cost?
Yes. You are arguing that processing data is our salvation. I argue that the very desire to know is what fractured our original state of unity in the first place.
Okay, how so?
Stevens draws heavily on the Genesis creation narrative to explain this. In the original Hebrew, the fall of Ha'adam, which translates more accurately to a unified original human state rather than a specific man, occurred precisely because of the hunger for the knowledge of good and evil.
Right, the forbidden fruit.
Exactly. And why is that specific phrase so important? Because knowledge of good and evil is the birth of duality. Before that, there was just pure, unfragmented feeling.
Okay, but
when the intellect steps in, it takes reality and splits it into polarities. Up and down, right and wrong, plus and minus.
Okay, pause. Are you suggesting that the ability to differentiate, like right from wrong or hot from cold, is a negative thing?
I am saying that thinking blocks feeling. And judgment creates the shadow.
The shadow, you mean in the Jungian sense?
Yes. The moment the intellect splits reality into polarities, we naturally cling to the plus and reject the minus. And whatever we reject doesn't just disappear.
It gets pushed down.
Right. It gets shoved into the unconscious. It becomes our shadow side. This is the root of suffering. We spend our entire lives desperately trying to manage the polarities we created ourselves.
So you think trying to understand the world is just shadow management?
Essentially, yes. So life's true purpose cannot be intellectual mastery or getting better at categorizing the world. The purpose is a journey back to the source. We have to release the ego's addiction to knowing, which ultimately is just an addiction to separation.
Well, let's stay with the biology for a second, because I think the physical mechanics of the cell actually refute the idea that separation and specialization are somehow a tragedy.
How so?
Let's look at apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. When a cell realizes it's damaged or no longer serving the whole, it initiates a highly logical, built-in biological strategy to dismantle itself.
It dies.
Right. It sacrifices itself for the greater good of the organism. This requires an incredibly sophisticated level of cellular knowing. It has to be aware of its context.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Conversely, what happens when a cell loses its defined role? When it stops measuring its environment and ignores the feedback loops entirely.
It multiplies.
It starts growing infinitely for its own sake. It becomes cancer. To me, this proves that purpose is rooted in physical, measurable participation. We are built with a core and a membrane, a soul and a shell, and our job is to regulate that exchange intelligently, just like a healthy cell.
The biological reality of cancer is terrifying precisely because it mirrors our spiritual reality.
Mirrors it how?
Well, I acknowledge the core and shell biological structure, but Stevens utilizes Hermetic philosophy here, the ancient principle of as above, so below.
Right. The microcosm and the macrocosm.
Exactly. The biological cell is just a physical echo of a spiritual trinity. The source, the core, which is our soul, and the shell, which is the ego, or the I.
Okay, but the healthy cell regulates its membrane perfectly well.
Yes, but in human consciousness, the shell, the ego, is fundamentally terrified of the core. The ego stubbornly resists the light of the essence.
Why?
Absolute foundation of physics. That exact friction is what makes existence possible.
You mean on an atomic level?
Yes. You view the ego's resistance to the core as a spiritual tragedy that needs to be resolved through surrender. But let's look at the atom. You have a positively charged nucleus in the center and negatively charged electrons orbiting it.
Right.
The electron actively resists collapsing into the nucleus. It is a constant state of tension. But that very resistance, that refusal to merge back into the center, is literally what sustains physical matter.
It maintains the physical form, yes.
Exactly. If the electron surrendered and collapsed into the nucleus, the atom would disintegrate. The universe would dissolve into nothingness. Isn't this so-called ego resistance actually the necessary engine of existence?
That's a huge assumption.
Is it? Without the tension of knowing, measuring, and resisting the core, there is no life to begin with.
It assumes that the maintenance of physical matter is the ultimate goal of the universe. Matter is just the solidified outer crust of the infinite. It is the furthest point from source.
The furthest point?
Yes. Stevens connects this to the Gnostic teachings of Ptolemy, which suggests that the material world wasn't created out of a state of perfection, but out of a disturbance, a desire or a lack within the divine unity.
So the physical world is just a mistake?
Not a mistake, but in exile. Yes, the electron's resistance maintains the physical world. But the physical world is the realm of separation. Furthermore, relying on the intellect to understand this system is totally futile. Immanuel Kant pointed this out centuries ago.
Wait, how so? Kant was a champion of reason.
Kant was the champion of defining the limits of reason.
Okay, fair.
He argued that human cognition is structurally limited to processing the phenomenal world, the world as it appears to our senses. We can never, ever access the noumenal world, the thing in itself, absolute reality.
Right, the filter of perception.
Exactly. Our intellect acts like a permanent filter. So when you use the intellect to try and grasp the infinite, you are using the very tool that sustains your separation. You see the atom's resistance as the beautiful architecture of life. I see it as the architecture of a prison.
But calling it a prison completely dismisses the fact that our observation has a tangible, structural impact on the universe. This isn't just abstract philosophy, it's measurable physics.
Are you talking about quantum mechanics now?
Yes. Stevens brings in quantum mechanics to illustrate this, specifically the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment.
Which is a highly complex physical experiment, I agree. But how does it prove we aren't trapped?
Because it proves we are the architects, not the inmates.
Let's break down how bizarre the quantum eraser experiment actually is. If you fire a single photon through two tiny slits toward a screen, it acts like a wave, interfering with itself and creating a pattern of multiple stripes on the wall.
The classic wave pattern, right?
Right, but if you place a detector at the slits, just to measure which slit the photon actually goes through, it stops acting like a wave. It acts like a solid particle, leaving just two bands on the screen.
It collapses the wave function.
Exactly. The mere act of knowing its path changes its physical nature. But the delayed choice version takes it a step further. They set it up so the measurement happens after the photon has already passed through the slits, but before it hits the screen.
And the result is the same?
Astonishingly, yes, the photon still acts like a particle. Our decision to measure it in the present retroactively collapses the wave function in the past.
And your takeaway from this mind-bending physics is that the intellect is supreme?
My takeaway is that the histories of the universe literally depend on what is being measured. Without a conscious observer taking a measurement, reality remains a blurry wave of probabilities.
Okay, but
Let me just finish this point. Our sensory perception, our intellect actively collapses the wave function into tangible reality. We are the universe's ultimate measuring instrument. Knowledge and observation bring the world into being.
I fundamentally reject that framing.
You reject quantum physics?
No, I reject your philosophical conclusion. You are taking quantum measurement as proof of our supreme intellectual role as co-creators. But what are we actually measuring?
We're measuring reality.
Are we? When the wave function collapses, what are we looking at? The text explicitly explores Carl Jung's concept of the shadow. Jung argued that whatever is rejected from the self, whatever we refuse to feel internally, appears in the external world as an event.
So reality is a mirror.
Yes, the external world is a mirror. So when your quantum observer collapses the wave function, they aren't engaging in some noble act of creation. The ego is simply generating reality as a feedback loop of its own resistance.
Wow, okay.
The external world is just the ego, endlessly staring at its own rejected parts.
Wait. If the external world is a mirror of our internal shadow, then the intellectual pursuit of understanding reality isn't a trap. It is a cosmic diagnostic tool.
A diagnostic tool.
Yes. Think about your car's dashboard. When the check engine light comes on, it's a signal that there's a malfunction under the hood. You don't smash the dashboard bulb and pretend the engine is fine.
Well, obviously not.
You read the diagnostic. If reality reflects what we have suppressed, why would we condemn the act of observing and measuring reality? It is the absolute only way we know our psychological engine is overheating.
Because you are confusing the symptom with the cure.
I don't follow.
Staring at the dashboard and analyzing the electrical circuitry of the warning light does not fix the engine. The intellect absolutely loves to analyze the shadow. It loves to categorize it, to write academic papers about it, to measure its quantum effects.
But that analysis leads to solutions.
No, analysis is not integration. Integration requires raw feeling. And as we established earlier, thinking blocks feeling. As long as you are searching for proof, as long as you are measuring the external mirror, you are not at peace with what is.
So you just ignore the problem?
You surrender to it. Thinking is the ego's most sophisticated defense mechanism to avoid the uncomfortable, raw feeling of truth. We don't heal by analyzing the mirror.
Then how do we practically resolve this? If reading the dashboard is just a symptom, what is the actionable mechanism for healing?
Surrender.
But Stevens gives a profound personal example in the text that directly relies on conscious intellectual optimization.
You're talking about his son.
Yes, he talks about his young son Jebby, who was experiencing severe stomach aches and sleeplessness. Doctors couldn't find a physical cause, so Stevens used his conscious awareness to analyze the feedback loop. He traced his son's physical symptoms back to a massive, suppressed inner conflict Stevens himself was having about quitting his highly stressful corporate job.
Exactly. He realized his son was carrying his unexpressed fear.
Right, but look at the mechanism of how he fixed it. By identifying that feedback loop, by using his intellect to connect the dots and make the darkness conscious, he was able to sit down with his son and communicate it.
It wasn't just intellectual, though.
But he took intellectual responsibility for his reality,
And the moment he made the unconscious conscious, his son's physical symptoms vanished. We heal not by dying to the self, but by optimizing our conscious choices and bringing light to the hidden mechanisms.
You are sanitizing what actually happened in that story. Stevens didn't just optimize a conscious choice like a machine.
He analyzed the situation.
He broke down. He didn't coldly analyze a feedback loop. He allowed himself to finally feel the immense guilt, terror, and stress he had been hiding from his family and himself. True healing only occurs when the I, the intellect, the ego, completely surrenders.
Surrender again.
Yes, Stevens parallels this with the biblical story of Jacob wrestling with God.
The struggle in the desert.
Yes, Jacob wrestles with a mysterious figure all night. He doesn't outsmart the angel. He doesn't intellectually optimize his grappling technique.
Right.
He wrestles until his hip is permanently dislocated. He is physically broken. Only then does he receive his blessing, and the very next morning, he is forced to bow down to his brother Esau, who, in psychological terms, represented Jacob's ultimate shadow, the brother he betrayed.
So you're saying he had to be broken to heal?
The ancient Egyptians had a term for this: practicing death. It is an ego death. Thinking must completely stop so that pure, unfiltered feeling can finally merge the polarities back together. Life's purpose is completed only when the ego is willingly sacrificed on the altar of unconditional self-love.
But asking humanity to seek its own psychological annihilation seems incredibly fatalistic. I mean, why are we given this immense cognitive capacity if the ultimate goal is to simply turn it off?
To learn the limits of it.
I want to bring it back to physics, because Stevens offers a much more elegant physical metaphor that does not require the death of the self. Think back to the atom we discussed.
Okay.
When an electron drops from a higher orbit to a lower orbit, meaning it moves closer to the nucleus, it emits a photon. It literally creates light.
A quantum leap.
Exactly. Notice what doesn't happen. The electron doesn't cease to exist. It simply changes its proximity to the core, and in doing so, it illuminates the world.
It's a beautiful metaphor, I'll give you that.
Doesn't this prove that we don't have to experience total ego death to fulfill our purpose? We don't have to merge into the nucleus and destroy the atom. We simply need to move closer to our core, reducing the distance between our shell and our soul, and let our intellect operate in service of the core to bring light into our lived experience.
Moving closer to the core absolutely emits light and reduces the burden of physical life. But you are stopping halfway down the path because the ego is terrified of the destination.
Terrified of what?
What is the ultimate trajectory of that electron? What is the ultimate force pulling on us? Gravity, entropy, the inevitable return to the source.
But the text explicitly states that full enlightenment means absolutely zero resistance to origin. When the resistance drops to zero, the poles collapse into each other. Thought shuts down. The self-concept dissolves entirely. You're arguing for non-existence.
You want to keep the ego around as a functional, enlightened tool for navigating a lighter life. But the ancient wisdom is clear. The journey only ends when the drop of water merges back into the ocean. The intellect desperately wants to survive the process, but surrender is an absolute condition.
But if the drop merges back into the ocean, the experience of life ends entirely. Complete enlightenment, where all polarity vanishes, means the end of creation. It means the game is over.
Yes.
If our ultimate purpose was simply to not exist as individuals, why would the universe undergo the incredibly complex process of emanation from source to core to shell in the first place? Why build the atom?
To experience the return.
Why build the cell? Why evolve the human brain to the point where it can measure the quantum realm? I maintain that while we are here, in this physical reality, our purpose is a courageous intellectual engagement with the universe.
Even if it causes suffering?
We are meant to use our capacity to know, to measure reality, and to decode the feedback loops. We are literally the universe looking back at itself, trying to achieve homeostasis through radical honesty.
Right. And we emanated from the source due to a disturbance. We fell into duality, into the illusion of separation, to learn the profound lesson of unconditional love.
Right.
And we learn it by navigating the intense suffering that separation creates. Life's ultimate purpose is the journey back home. And you simply cannot walk that path while clinging to the very intellectual armor that caused the separation in the first place.
I just fundamentally disagree that the intellect is armor.
You cannot think your way to God. It requires profound belief, which is the complete absence of the need for proof. It is a surrender to our deeper essence. It means looking at the pain, the shadow, and the chaos of the world, not as a mathematical puzzle to be solved, but as fragmented parts of the divine crying out to be loved.
Well, it seems we have reached the absolute bedrock of this debate. But despite our wildly different approaches between knowing and belief, we both clearly agree on one profound premise.
Which is?
The external reality we experience is an inescapable mirror of our internal state. The physical world, our biology, our conflicts, they're all reflecting the parts of our core that we have veiled.
Yes, on that we are in total agreement. Avoiding our inner truth and suppressing our shadow inevitably creates suffering. The barbed wire we refuse to acknowledge internally will always manifest as pain externally.
Right? Where we remain respectfully divided is on the mechanism of salvation. I look at this incredible mirror of reality and see an invitation to master it.
Through measurement.
Yes, through rigorous observation, radical transparency, and the conscious pursuit of knowledge, we can diagnose our misalignments and co-create a reality of light.
And I look at the exact same mirror and see an invitation to transcend it entirely, to realize that the one obsessively looking in the mirror is an illusion, and that by relinquishing the desire to know, we can finally surrender to the profound peace of simply being.
So the next time you find yourself looking closely at the details of your life, trying to map it out, trying to measure every variable and analyze every problem like you're peering through a high-powered microscope.
Just pause for a second.
Exactly. Ask yourself, are you finally seeing the truth, or are you just desperately using your intellect to avoid feeling it?